That's good to know.
Thinking about how to say it.
Okay, I think you're live.
Okay, amazing. All right, this is Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and it is Wednesday, April 16th. And we are starting in with 319. We have I think we have some new language to look at. So yes, which is very exciting. So I'm gonna welcome Mr. Chapman. Hello.
Good morning, Madam Chair. So for the record, my name is Matt Chapman. I'm the Director of Waste Management and Prevention with the Department of Environmental Conservation. On your committee webpage, you should see a document from me dated the 15th that is an A&R set of recommended changes. So as this bill had moved its way through the process, the folks from the paint industry, which already has an EPR program, and the solid waste districts have been sort of discussing how you can take products that are related to paint and move them out of the HHW world and into the paint world. And what you see in this this document is sort of the consensus that addresses paint care's issues. I believe it addresses the district's issues, and it addresses A&R's concern. And so with that, what I will do very quickly is just sort of walk you through sort of what I think are the three major points of this, and then just let you ask any questions you have.
And just to be clear, so this is the draft that we have printed out. And it's
Yes,
in
it is.
our.
Yes, 1.1. It is 1.1 A&R discussion draft revised with paint technical corrections at the top.
Okay.
And so I think the best place to start is on page 3 in the definitions, and what you see are basically 3 new definitions to the paint statute. Aerosol coating products, which are basically spray can paints. Coating related products, which are things like paint thinners, paint, removers, surface sealants, etc. And then if you go on to page 4, you see non-industrial coatings, which are like automotive refinishing paint, driveway sealants, furniture oils, marine paints, other sorts of things. And then you see the sort of penultimate change, which is the addition of a definition called paint product, which includes architectural coatings, which is what's currently covered by the paint program, aerosol coatings, coating related products, and non-industrial coatings. So I'm going to pause for just a second here. There are a lot of conforming changes that you are going to see in this.
I lost track there. You said the big changes.
Yeah, those are just sort of that's the new universe that we're talking about in paint.
Just repeat that part.
It's architectural coatings, right? So your sort of traditional wall coating paints. Yep. Aerosol, coating related, and non-aerosol. So that's the new universe of paint related products. And you will see as you sort of scroll through the document everywhere, changes from architectural paint to paint related products, right? So there are lots of conforming changes all over the place in this document. I'm not going to go through them all. I've certainly worked with Ledge Council, and Mike may have picked up on 1 or 2 other issues as we sort of roll through. The next major change is on page 8.
Before we get
Yes.
there, can I ask, I think I need to, I just want to make sure that I understand it. So, because right now, there is a paint, I'm not sure what you call it.
EPR program.
EPR, okay, so there's a paint EPR program, and then there's household hazardous waste.
Correct.
And the only ones that are covered currently in the paint EPR is just the architectural coatings.
Correct.
And so all these other things like paint thinners, driveway sealers or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are all in the household hazardous waste world, but we're moving them into the paint world, out of the household hazardous waste into the paint world, but with some different definitions.
Right, to really define what are the sort of paint related products, and maybe it's better if I take one or two steps back, right?
Yeah.
So the paint care program's been in existence for a while now, and it's an incredibly successful program. It provides great service to the solid waste districts. It picks up architectural paint, and frankly, I think it's probably worth noting. They provided an amazing service to the state of Vermont during 23 and 24 as far as picking up flood related debris and paint after the major flood events that we had in the state. So I mean, the paint program has been very successful. Basically, last year well, I guess it's been a couple of years at this point, created the HHW program. It excludes the existing paint EPR program, which is the architectural paint. And the paint product PRO, the Product Responsibility Organization, came and said, we'd like to take sort of all of our products and just keep them with paint, right? Rather than having sort of spanning between two different PROs. And I think that from the agency's perspective, we thought that was reasonable, but we had a couple of things that we wanted to have a discussion about. And I would say from the district's perspective, they thought that was reasonable, but there were some modifications that they wanted to have made. So backing up contextually, that's sort of the larger picture, so that frankly, the folks in the paint universe aren't sort of dealing with multiple PROs and multiple issues, right? So, which I think is logical and it makes sense. All right. So diving back in.
Thank you.
Yeah, I apologize for not sort of setting the context at the beginning.
No, it's okay.
If you actually now dive into page 8, so now we're gonna get into sort of what I would say the sort of first sort of policy or major changes. Midway through, you'll see a long paragraph that says the paint program shall also provide for the payment of municipalities for collection, processing, end of life management of aerosol coating products, coating related products in non-industrial coatings. So basically what this section does is there are some costs under the existing paint stewardship program that the PRO does not reimburse districts for. Those costs would have been reimbursed under the HHW program. This basically extends that reimbursement to the new products. So the aerosol coating products, the coating related products, and non-industrial coating products. The districts have a representative here. They can say whether this satisfies their concerns. My understanding is that it does.
So, but it doesn't cover those extended costs for architectural.
It does not cover it for architectural.
Yeah, so it's sort of keeping at least the financing aspect of whole from what would have been covered in HHW.
Right, it basically ensures that those sort of costs that would have been covered in HHW for the products that would have been in HHW, that they get covered under the APR program.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then really the next sort of what I would call policy level change. Well, I guess I will flag because Michael flagged. The anti-competitive conduct section, he's likely to have comments on that. I don't, but he's flagged it before.
Sorry, which page is that?
That is on page 11, thank you, Heidi. At the bottom of the page, section 6676. And then the next change that I would flag is on page 14. It's a new section 6681, paint consumer fees. And so again, let me provide a little bit of context in the space. The way the paint program was established, it charges a fee to consumers at the time the paint is purchased to cover the cost of the ultimate sort of disposition of paint at the end of its life. And as the way the program was set up, it put the agency in charge of reviewing and approving and saying that those fees were reasonable. It became clear to us after a couple of journeys into the fee setting world that this is not something that the Agency of Natural Resources is well suited to do. That, I think both from our expertise as an environmental regulator, we don't have the capacity to provide sort of the in-depth review of these fees. And then there's the general policy sort of view in Vermont that fees get set by the legislature. So what this does is it does that, right? It takes these consumer fees, it puts them into statute, and to the extent that they get modified, it requires a legislative act to do it.
We have a question here.
Yes,
Just, back on page 11,
yes.
funding goes to municipalities. How do they get?
So solid waste districts are municipalities.
Okay.
So they
Okay.
meet the definition of municipality under the Vermont definition of municipalities.
Since we're stopped,
Sure.
I had a question on page 10.
Yes.
I could just picture, someone flipping through this and being like, oh, we've crossed out is cost effective. Can you just comment on that? I think I know why, but,
So again, this is part of the fee setting exercise, right? So we're getting out of the business of making a decision. The agency is getting out of the business of making a decision around the cost effective nature. And that really as it relates to the fee provision of the program. I mean, I guess I would say we'll review the budget. And I certainly don't have any issue providing the legislature with testimony and our perspective and recommendations. It feels like it's beyond what the agency should be doing, just setting retail fees for all paint purchasers in the state of Vermont without some sort of authorization by the legislature.
thank you, that's all.
Yep.
Okay, and I think, so we're back on page 14.
We are.
With the fees.
So I guess the fees are broken into two parts. So part one is for architectural paint, and those are fixed amounts that are sold based on the size of the container. And that is the existing fee structure. So they are a firm dollar amount. The second sort of bucket is for these new products, architectural coatings, coating related products, and non-industrial coatings. And it gives the paint stewardship program a range that they can set the fee in. And, I'll let Heidi with Paint Care, she can talk about this a little bit more, but basically they're still in the process of trying to figure out their costs with respect to this, and they don't have a firm number to give either the agency or the legislature. So this gives them some discretion in doing this. I guess I would just say, again, bouncing down onto page 15, section 10, it also requires Paint Care and the agency to report back to the legislature once they sort of figure out the budget and how much these fees are, to let you know what those fees are so that you can set them in statute if you so choose. I guess I would say the last sort of two sort of elements that are fee related. One is it just makes it clear that the paint stewardship program, the purpose of this is that the fee covers the cost of the program. And if the fee gets out of, or excuse me, the costs get out of alignment with the fees, you should expect that the paint stewardship program is going to come in and ask for a change to the fee. And that's clear in the new section.
Process question.
Yes, go ahead.
So for back, you said to the legislature, to this committee?
It goes to both environmental committees, so it's in the Natural Resources and House Environment, as well as the Committee on Ways and Means and the Committee on Finance.
Who keeps track of that?
Well, I mean, all
It's
the,
kind of up in the air right now still, so.
all the reports get posted, and so they're certainly available to us, but as you were saying, if they got out of whack in terms of like not being able to cover the costs, then we would hear about it from the paint program because from the EPR. Because it's I think it's fair to say that it's in their interest to cover the costs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess,
Yeah, is there another question?
Just
trying to figure out how these act, the ones that are not set at the range. They're set by the stewardship program,
They are.
uses the word proposed their stewardship assessments. So they propose them, then what happens?
Well, I guess I would say that for those items in subdivision 2, they have the ability to set fees for those enumerated products in their plan.
The stewardship. Paint stewardship program.
Yes. And then in the future, I guess, yeah, and then we start what I would call a normal fee process, right? Where the General Assembly reviews everything and approves after, but it gives them sort of for the first fee setting portion, some discretion within a range to set a fee.
So like if we ever do a fee bill, this could theoretically,
It could be on the triennial cycle in our speed limit, yes. I guess the other thing, just for the committee to note, section 9, there's an implementation section. This section is materially the same. I don't know, there are a couple members who did our battery EPR program. I believe we did it last year, where we took the primary battery program and expanded it to rechargeable batteries. This is very similar. We're taking the architectural paint program and expanding it to these other products. So this helps to sort of explain the transition and implementation from that narrower program to the broader program and how it gets implemented.
okay. Great, so, yeah, go ahead, yes.
Big range.
So I'll let others speak to the range, right?
Just, you know,
You're talking about the fee structure? Yeah. So with the implementation. Just want to make sure that I'm understanding the parts of the implementation.
Sure.
So, part A is like, you gotta join
Mhm.
for all paint related products.
So the part A is basically like, it applies to architect, so basically the architectural paint program continues. And all three products begins on July 26th, July of 26. The requirement for a plan sort of continues, but applies to all producers of paint related products on July 26th.
Okay.
And then the annual reporting requirement continues with respect to sort of the architectural paint and sort of the interim. But on March 27, all paint related products have to start the reporting process. So again, and I'm happy, I would defer to Mike if he thinks additional implementation elements. This was largely taken from the battery program as in an effort to try and sort of acknowledge that we're gonna have an existing program going while we have a new program getting set up.
Got you, okay. Okay. So. Right, so B is about, oh, sorry, go ahead, yes.
No, I'm just thinking, that probably missed it, but, and so at what level will this, I mean, they're gonna pass any cost on to the consumer anyway. At what level is it gonna get passed on?
So this basically, the way it works with architectural paint is you will see the fee at retail. So when you go in and you buy a can of paint from your hardware store, you'll see the fee for the paint program. And it's based on the size of the container that you're purchasing.
And that ends up going to pay for the disposal at the end.
It ends up going to Fund Paint Care, which manages this program.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so that can of paint may not hit for 20 years after it sits on the workbench for
That-
a while. And then
you got
finally
it.
does, yeah, but it's paid for.
I've got all those games. Right. I will continue to be here for more questions.
Okay,
Right,
thank you. All right, and so we also have Colin, welcome. Thank you. Welcome.
I am Heidi McAuliffe. I'm the Senior Vice President for American Coatings Association. We're the organization that represents paint manufacturers, so the Sherwin-Williams, Benjamin Moores, Diamond Vogel, all the paint that you see on retail is manufactured by my company members. We are also the organization that established the paint care program back in the early, mid-2000s. And sort of launched EPR for paint across the country. We've been operating stewardship programs for paint since 2008. We kind of started on the West Coast and then we came over to the East Coast and have been operating here in Vermont, I think, since 2013. So really appreciate your comments, Matt. Our program here has been really successful over the years. We have a dedicated person in Vermont that is our state program manager named John Hurd. I think he's very familiar with all the local districts and working with them to manage this program. We currently have 82 permanent sites in the state of Vermont. So that's the permanent site for us means open year round, not an event, not something that's only open on Tuesdays. But 82 permanent year-round sites in the state of Vermont. And since we've been operating here, we've collected over 1.2 million gallons of paint. The majority of that is latex. Some of it is solvent. The solvent or the latex paint typically recycle a really high percentage of it, like 90%. The technology exists for recycling paint back into paint and paint into other products, so we utilize that as much as possible because we want to divert all of this from landfills. Solvent-based paint, not so much. There's just not the technology available to do that. Typically, that goes for energy recovery. So we've been really successful here in Vermont. We have kind of what we call 100% convenience for your residents, which to us means that every single resident in the state of Vermont has a collection site within 15 miles of their house. And when, for most people, it's more like 5 miles.
Did you say 15 or 50?
15.
15, okay.
But in reality, it's really more like
Yeah.
5 because there are so many and we're in the right places, to do that. So, I want to talk a little bit about how we see paint care operating. I mean, like I said, we've been managing this program in 11 different states. It's been very successful in every state, probably more successful in Vermont than some other places. Our recovery rate in Vermont is much higher. When you compare the amount of paint sold to the amount of paint brought back in Vermont, it's about 12%. In most of our states, it kind of hovers around 5, 6, 7%. And we really attribute that to the sort of mentality of Vermonters. You have a very sophisticated, well-developed materials management system here in Vermont, which we've been able to take advantage of. And it's yielded really good results in this state. So we're always very enthusiastic about working here. We have very good relationships with our local districts, with the Swimmies. Like I said, we have a dedicated person here who visits all of them, probably a couple times a year to kind of figure out what's working, what's not working, and what we need to fix. So moving in sort of to the household hazardous waste right now. Like I said, we've been working with architectural paint for a long time. We have historically gotten questions about aerosol coatings. Why aren't we collecting them? Could we please collect them? We've always kind of had that in our sights, that would sort of be the next evolution for paint care, that we would expand our services to include aerosol coatings. But as we've seen the issue of household hazardous waste kind of evolve and the debate, the conversation across the country, we started wondering whether or not we could expand paint care to include all of those products, paint, household hazardous waste. So the entire waste stream from our industry could we do that with our paint care infrastructure? And, you know, we took some time to try to figure it out. I wish we'd figured it out sooner, but we did come to the conclusion that our infrastructure is solidly built and that we could do this. We could streamline the management for these products, not only for the residents of your state, but for our manufacturers, so that they're not working with multiple PROs across different states. So we have accomplished this in California. We passed a law in California last year, allowing us to expand our paint care program to include these exact same products. Aerosol coatings, coatings related products, and non-industrial. And we're working right now to get that program implemented. And I'll just say a few words about the products, sort of these expanded products. So typically with our architectural paint program, we've had sort of this list of products. These are the products we take, these are the products we don't take. And with this expansion, basically those lists merge and we're taking everything. So everything that we're targeting with this expanded, with these expanded categories is in that non-program products list. And one of the issues that we've always had, and we have this across the states, is that consumers bring in, you know, to our retail collection sites, a bag of stuff or a box of stuff. And some of it is a paint care program product and some of it isn't. And the retailer's in a position of saying, well, I can take these things, but I can't take these things. And, you know, consumers, it's not a good message for consumers. With the expansion of our services to these 3 additional categories, that entire box is most likely coming into our paint care program. And I think there will be less confusion for consumers when they're trying to figure out what to do with all of their paint stuff. It's all gonna go in the same place for this. So that was one of our thought processes. It's a better situation for our users of paint products, but it's also a better situation for my manufacturers, so that they're only working with one PRO, sending reports to one PRO, and dealing with the compliance issues for one PRO. Let's see, I wanted also to talk a little bit about the fee provisions that are in this bill. You know, you had a lot of questions about the ranges for the expanded categories. One of the things that we've always done and will continue to do, even though ANR doesn't want to be in the business of making these types of decisions, we're still going to provide them all of this information. So sorry, Matt.
That's all right.
We're still going to get it all. But I want to describe to you sort of the process that we go through to figure out what our fee schedule is. So the revenue side of paint care are the sales in the state. So with every sale, there's a fee imposed on that product. So that's the revenue side for paint care. The budget or the expense side of paint care's budget is transportation, you know, collection costs, processing fees, and now with the sort of greater reimbursement model that we're introducing into this bill that mirrors the HHW reimbursement, more costs are going to go in there. So the setup fees and things of that nature. So what we do is we go and we find a financial auditor, an independent financial auditor who can help us evaluate what those costs are going to be. You know, we're going to talk to transporters, we're going to talk to all the different contractors that work in this arena, try to figure out what our costs are going to be. Then we're going out to all of our manufacturers, asking them to give us information on what their sales are in the state of Vermont. And then, you know, once we have all of those data points, we can kind of figure out what is the fee for these different products, and figure out our fee schedule. And, you know, I think what I want to communicate to you right now is that we're really well versed and we know exactly how the architectural coatings marketplace works from the consumer side. we don't have that knowledge right now for the HHW expanded products that we're gonna be managing. And that's why we have the ranges in this bill, because we don't know if most of these products are small containers, we don't know if they're larger containers, we're not sure. If the specialty products are gonna dominate, or if it's gonna be the coatings related products. I think we kind of have a better handle on aerosols, because there's more information, more data available specifically on that category. But we still have to learn a little bit more, a lot more about those other categories to try to figure out exactly what those costs are gonna be. So that's why we put the ranges, or we propose those ranges in there.
Can I ask you about some particular language that is in this?
Absolutely.
Okay, on page 14. Where that's sort of like the intro paragraph to the fees. My question is about, just that sentence before it gets into it. It says a retailer shall charge the following assessment on paint products. Blah, blah, blah. I guess I'm wondering about it, because, from what you're saying, what I feel like I'm understanding is that, or maybe I'm jumping into some conclusions here also, that it seems logical that it would be the product stewardship program that would be the one setting fees and telling retailers. I mean, I'm assuming the retailers are the ones that are actually like, it's like the Sherwin-Williams, it's like it's like the the store on the corner, that's the retailer. If I'm wrong about that, like.
No, you're right.
Okay, and so wondering how, who should be responsible? Well, I guess. How does it make sense that the retailer be the one setting the fees? Does that make sense? Let
Let me describe sort of the cash flow.
Okay.
Cause I think that will answer your question.
And just to catch on Hardy, so we're looking at this potential new language about paint to be
Okay.
added to 319.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, hard for me. It's okay, no worries. And we're on page 14.
So when we're starting a new program, or in this case, when we're expanding a program, we're gonna be working on a program plan that we'll submit to A&R. As part of that program plan, we're gonna get this financial auditor who's gonna go through the process I just described, figuring out what our expenses are gonna be and what our revenue streams be, or needs to be. And as I said, the revenue stream comes from the sale of these products in the state. We communicate directly with the manufacturers to determine what their sales are. On a quarterly basis, they will tell us what their sales are, and then they will apply the fee to those sales and send a check directly to Paint Care. And that's the revenue stream, 100% for the Paint Care program. That fee is then added to the product and passed down through the distributor to the retailer. The retailer sells that product, the fee is added to it, the retailer is then reimbursed for the fee that they paid to the manufacturer. The fee will be set through this process that we work through with the financial auditor, submitted in our program plan and actually submitted here. Once we know what those numbers are.
I think that process is making sense to me. I guess I'm just gonna like flag this particular line as like, it could be clearer, because I don't want the retailer to think that they are the one setting such a, that they get to choose.
Got it.
Did that make sense?
I understand. I think what your concern is it looks like the retailer gets to choose between that range.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And that is a problem.
No, that's.
With language.
Yeah, right, and I think what you're saying makes sense, it's, so we can add some clarity there.
And I think what Matt was trying to communicate, Matt's vision was once that fee is set through this process with the financial auditor, we're gonna come back to you with a report that says the fee is X.
Right,
And you,
and they gotta do it.
yes,
Right, so,
okay,
I mean, even if it upgrades something like to charge the following assessment as determined by, you know,
Perfect.
whatever.
yeah. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out,
Yeah.
I didn't catch that.
And it's okay. Sorry, if you have more, I realized I was interrupting, so.
No, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think I've kind of explained our, our feeling about the process for setting fees or coming up with that equation. If there's more questions on that,
I know, I would say, I got comfortable through this discussion with that range, because it's your own product,
Right.
it's your own price you're setting. So, if you wanna charge more than a lot, it's gonna make you part of selling your product, so the fact that it's within your, I'm comfortable with it. Yeah.
and believe me, I mean, my manufacturers want to sell a
Yeah.
good product,
Yeah.
and they are, that's an interest.
It's positive about it.
Dropping that fee is not possible.
No, I'm totally comfortable with that. So that's.
I think the only other thing I wanted to mention is that, I realize we came into this conversation a little bit late, after the HHW bill was already passed. I wish we had started a little bit sooner, down this path. But we really had, I think, very good conversations with the Swifties. I mean, we started, probably a year and a half ago, thinking about this, talking, with Jen Holiday at Chittenden and Jessica, on a couple of occasions. We had several teams calls with all of the swimmies on the call and really tried to listen and figure out what, what were their pain points? How could we come up with a solution that they were gonna be comfortable with, that allowed pain care to evolve in this way?
So I'm so grateful that you all took the time to come to some consensus language. That is fantastic. Really appreciate all the work that everybody put into getting to this language. Yeah, go ahead, and then I have another follow-up.
Okay, let me just ask one question. So with the range, the top of 15, if you were to, for instance, the 2 to 5 gallons, set that now at $2, it would probably take a lot of years to raise it to 6, which you could do over, so you've got a real range here that could move over time. I'm wondering whether you want to do that on page 14. Give yourselves a range so that as you set the fee, you can move them over time the same way the pyramid you can on 15. Or is this envisioned to be you set it once and you're done?
Are you talking about for the architectural things?
Yeah.
I would love to do that.
And so Mike, let me just make sure I'm reading this, understanding this right. For instance, using D on the top of page 15. If you were to start at $2, because that's what you was figured you'd need, you could over the course of years, move it up as high as to $6 without coming back to the legislature. Is that correct, Matt? You're thinking.
So again, just to chime in on this, I mean, I think that the reason for the range is because pain care is still in the process of trying to figure out cost information instead of a reasonable fee. I think it's not at least the agency's perspective that those fees would be sort of open for a long period of time. I mean, and again, I guess I would just step back. The model that's existed prior to this is that the agency basically reviews and approves pain care's fees. I think if you're going to give pain care some discretion to set their own fees, there needs to be some sort of oversight of that function. I think the agency's perspective is we're not that entity, right? Like, and that because Vermont has this history of fee setting taking place in the legislature, that is the better place for it.
So this language that is perhaps a little loose because it's not clear to me the way it's written that you do it once and then come back. If that's what's intended, it's not clear how this.
Does it make sense?
So-
Go ahead.
I'll just say, historically, what's happened with our architectural coatings program is, we would go through this process to establish the fees, the agency would approve them, we begin working the program, and we provide an annual report every single year with a lot of data in it, a lot of collection data, a lot of financial data. And obviously, we're tracking the financial data so that we make sure we're covering our costs. If we start to see that we are in danger of not covering our costs, then we start really looking, okay, what's the problem here? Did we overestimate sales? Did we underestimate transportation costs? How does that, what happened with our analysis? And then we try to figure out how to fix it. And if it's a fee increase, typically we'll start talking to the agency right away and say, look, we think we might need a fee increase. And in the past, we have done that with what we would call a program amendment. We would send some, additional financial analysis to the agency and say, we need a fee increase, and we give them the fee schedule, and we go through that process. If with this particular situation, those fees for architectural paint, those are the fees that are currently in effect right now. If we need to change those, we do need to come back to you and ask you for.
So Matt, I'm just saying, I don't think it's clear how this works.
So I am more than happy to work with Mike to try and provide additional clarity on this section.
It also occurs to me that it may, because there's more data that maybe needs to be understood to determine what the right amounts are. Could we put that as, make it clear that there's a time limit on those fees, and that we're gonna adopt something more concrete moving into, after a certain date. That's another possibility, but I think Senator Williamson was
Supposed to have from a consumer level, so what happens if you find that you made more money than you planned on? Is there any way that we can set it up so that we can get a
Absolutely.
pass back to the consumer?
Well, we have a history of reducing fees where we are collecting too much money. We've reduced fees in the District of Columbia program, and we've reduced fees in California for that reason, because, we're a nonprofit, we're not doing any distributions. If we're collecting too much money, it's just sitting there. So we
But
reduce
we're
our
not
fees.
telling you, what to set the fee at. So,
Right,
And there's.
but we would
there's a
come to
concept,
you.
uh,
Yeah, there's absolutely worth an incentive, and like I said, we would come to the agency and say, look, we're collecting too much money.
well,
I'm late to this conversation, so if you've already covered this ground, and I'm sorry, I'm not feeling well, so I was taking extra time this morning, but I don't know if there's and I look at Michael and Matt, is there another area or program where we have an outside entity setting the fees? It's
Not at retail.
Right.
yeah, I mean, this seems a little odd to me to have some outside entity setting the fees, that's our job. And maybe it's just a matter of drafting it correctly. And also just a process question, this will mean this bill goes to finance. And finance right now has H-454, the big education bill. And this will get buried and we won't be able to deal with it. Or if we are not extremely clear in this room about how all of this works, we could go down a rabbit hole in finance and never get out. So I just want you as chair to understand, is it worth putting this on the bill right now to have it go to finance that has a huge task in front of it right now? Your call.
Yeah, fair enough, thank you.
Can I?
Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say the whole idea of putting the fees in the bill right now are to sort of avoid that appearance that. I mean, you are setting fees by looking at this language, evaluating it, and moving it through the process. I mean,
To set the range.
But if you have the opportunity to change the fee without it coming back to the legislature, that I don't think is done.
And that's in here as well. Is that we need to come back with a report specifically saying what the fee is within that range. To this body,
And then we could act to.
put it in the law, you know.
Okay, that seems like an odd process, but
Yes, good.
How does this whole program intersect with out-of-state purchases of paint?
How does it intersect with out of state purchases?
Yeah, I mean, if
So if somebody crosses the
Hampshire.
border,
buys paint, do they have an equivalent type of program and fee and?
they don't currently, but I have a bill that's already passed the House in New Hampshire. That is setting up the architectural paint program there.
Okay, so let's say that bill fails. If somebody goes over to New Hampshire and buys paint, doesn't pay any of these fees. They come, bring it all back to Vermont, will they still get rid of it at this, if he's one of 82 different,
If they're a Vermont resident, I'm not gonna turn them away.
there's nothing on the can that says, hey, it was purchased under this program. or-
No, there isn't.
Okay. Right.
But, you know, we've heard that, I mean, you know, we have programs in Maine, Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, and New York. We have bills in New Hampshire right now and in Massachusetts. We've heard that issue before. It's never really caused us any issue. I mean, we don't turn away our consumers when they bring stuff in, and it hasn't impacted our bottom line.
My concern is that the paint store in Vermont's bottom line. Yeah.
I understand, and
Okay.
we've talked with those as well.
Yeah.
You know, to try to figure out exactly what's going on, and we haven't been able to pinpoint any significant issues with it.
Yeah.
It's always a concern.
Okay, any further questions at this point? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to welcome our legislative council up. Welcome. I have a question for you related to Senator Hardy's question earlier. Is there anything in 319 as it exists currently that means it would likely go to finance? Like, is it going to finance that?
I have to refresh my recollection on that question.
Okay.
I'm not forward. The story going on. I don't know if the Senate Secretary would send it there because of the language on the covered household hazardous products EPR program. There's a possibility that people would. There's also that's probably the biggest question mark.
Okay. So maybe a little bit.
He also will send it there. There is a permit fee, that's the scope of the program changes. And so that's a possibility too with the covered household hazardous products. So I can't say for sure.
Okay, so we'll look into that.
And I can ask him for a opinion if you would like.
That would be great. Because this language certainly would. But just want to check in with folks how you are feeling about, I know, Sir Hardy, you were not here for some of it, so if you wanna like reserve your opinion for later,
Sure.
that's totally fair, but, for others, you know, other thoughts on, your interest in including this language in 319.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah,
Bring it all to one program, it's fun.
right, and allowing paint to participate in just one program as opposed to two. That's in my mind a good thing. Senator Williams,
Yes.
you're into including it?
Yep.
Okay, Senator Beck?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. If you have more thoughts on that, happy to talk further about it.
You can take the lead in finance then, buddy.
I don't like the border situation.
Mhm,
Works great for Home Depot or Lowe's, it doesn't work good for local paint sellers.
yeah,
So is that as proposed by Matt, or do you want changes to the fee range language?
well, I think there are some changes that I think we probably need already. So are you looking at their draft?
I have their language as.
So on page 14, there's no line numbers, but the sentence just before the,
Could you tell me what section it's in?
sure, let's see.
6681.
That's the formatted it in our format. 6681.
681.
Section.
So that sentence just before the fee structure starts, it says a retailer shall charge the following assessment on paint products in the amount established by, I guess it does say in the amount established by the approved stewardship organization based on current material management. I guess I'm wanting that to be a little stronger, to make it clear that the retailer is not the one who gets to choose what the P amount is, since there is a range. You know, it is our prerogative also as a committee to just say, we don't want a range, we want us to set the fees. And we can always revisit it. I don't know how well that would go over, but just to say, this is what they are, then we are in the business of setting that if folks are not comfortable with the range. Seems like a compromise language between we should be setting the fees and we're not entirely sure what they should be. So
So they're not even sure.
right, yeah,
I mean, and usually in this case, and correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, but we don't put a fee in the
Mhm.
language, we say, report back to us
Mhm.
what you think the fee should be. And then we set them next session,
Mhm.
so that there's not a fee that's
Yeah,
vague in the bill, that there's a.
I would be comfortable with that as well.
That might help in finance, to be like, okay, we're not trying to set a fee, we just need you to report back to us on how this is, what the rate should be.
And you might have been here, Senator Hardy, when they said this, but just to be clear, the fees that are in number 1, on the bottom of page 15, those are that is the current fee structure.
This is the current fee.
Yeah.
And they wanna change this current?
No,
No, okay,
so just to back up,
I'm sorry, I wasn't.
No, it's
so
okay.
You don't have to explain the whole thing to me.
I mean, just real briefly, the architectural paint program exists. And so all these other things that are covered in 2 would be covered in the current household hazardous waste program. But it's weird for architectural paint and like paint thinners to be in 2 separate programs. So this is just bringing all the paint-like products into the paint fund.
Got it.
Yeah.
So the first set of fees under 1, the architectural paint fees are current.
Yeah.
That's current.
Yes.
It's just they're not sure how much the fees are gonna be with other.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would just have them report back by December 15th or whatever, the
Mhm.
committee and money committees, and then we can set them next year.
Mhm.
because this range makes me a little nervous.
Just want to check in with folks if you have opinions about that as a possibility. Yes.
So I think the only problem with that is I'm just not, so typically what happens is when a bill passes like this, it takes us 12 months to do a program plan. And part of that program plan preparation is doing this sort of financial work so that we can figure out what that fee schedule is. So it really will depend upon what timeline we put in the bill for reporting that fee to you. And then for us, I mean, we're gonna need some certainty that we can move forward with that fee schedule, because that's how we're building the whole program. So
When is this supposed to start,
It
the
is.
program?
July 26th.
July 2026, is that, there's also March 2027 in here.
The requirements in the implementation section, the requirements for sale of peak products shall apply to architecture buildings on July 1, 2013, which is already in place, and all peak products meaning July 1, 2026.
I think if there was a reasonable timeline so that you could do your
Yes.
work. And just come back to us after that. And I understand that there's like, the hesitancy around, well, we would need to act to actually set a fee, but I would say, we'll take that up when it's time.
yeah, our transportation contracts, all of that, I mean, RFPs and everything depend upon that budget setting exercise.
And the other thing that would be on my radar in setting that timeline is how well it harmonized with the HHW program.
Yep.
Maybe if we pass this, maybe you wouldn't be caught, I wouldn't want you to be caught in both for even like a window of time, and if we pass this language, I don't think that would be true. I don't think you would be caught in both.
When does that start?
I have to go back and look, but that's a part of
July 26th.
this, so. But I don't think that will be a problem if we.
You just don't think you'll have the fee information ready by next January?
By January 2026,
Yeah,
it's April, maybe, it's quite possible. I mean, our goal was to get up and running as soon as possible, and actually even before HHW. I have to go back and check with my folks who actually do this work to see if they would have it by January, but I would hope so.
I mean, I think just having a definitive fee in the statute that we have set would be better than having this range that's a little vague, but.
Does this sound, or do you have enough information, Michael, to draft something to this effect, to say, come back to us with a report by January, maybe July, like we can find the right date of when that report should be due. Mr. Chapman.
I think you can just take section 10 and change the reporting date from January 15, 27 to December 15, 25.
Okay.
Or January 15, 26, right? And that it basically asks them to report the fees for aerosol coatings, coating related products, and non-industrial coatings to the money committees and the environment committees.
I think it should be that they recommend fees, not tell us what the fees are, but recommend what they think.
Proposed,
proposed
yes,
fees.
agreed, say,
No,
yeah,
it's
Please set the fees,
fair, yes.
So instead of report,
power of the purse.
instead of report, we'd say propose.
Matt, where was that change made?
So it's in the last
The last section, but I.
section. 10.
What date did you propose, Matt?
I mean, there's obviously, normally the legislature likes to have things in the second year of the biennium earlier, so
Yeah,
December
December.
15,
Yeah,
25.
and you can also say those are the initial fees, and that you can come back and report the following year. Or, if you need to tweak the fees too, because. I understand you might not have full information to totally set the fee, for the long haul, but for the initial fees.
So. What do you? It would be, if the bill is passed, well, it'd be like July, right?
You mean when it's effective?
When it, yes.
Yeah, the effective date would likely be July. I mean, we could, actually, what is
You
the,
make it whatever you want.
yeah, we can even set the effective date separately for this section. Do you have a preference?
Yes, I do. I mean, as soon as possible would be helpful for us because it does take us that 12 months to come up with that program plan, and that's such a big part of it, so. December is really gonna be pushing us for coming up with that fee schedule.
Yeah, so the bill that we would be attaching this to is effective upon passage.
Okay.
So,
That's helpful.
that would fit with your suggestion. Okay. Okay. So just taking this
How
side.
you look at these.
So let's talk about the mechanics of this. So would 6681 come out? Where the fees are actually set? Do you want that removed from the bill, or do you want that to have a future effective date?
I would think that we would keep it except for two,
Okay,
so that we have a place, an obvious place to put things when we do create the fee structure.
okay. And then since the program is not going into effect until July 2026, we can still keep the language striking the assessment and under 6675B.
Sorry, can you say that again?
So right now, under 6675, there's the authority for the secretary to review and approve the stewardship assessment proposed by the producer. And that's being struck because it's being replaced by the P section. And so we're gonna keep that straight, correct, Matt?
Correct.
All right, so that's,
So right now you approve them?
Yeah, and we're basically, we don't think we're the right person. to
I
do it.
see, okay.
It's sort of outside A&R's wheelhouse to approve these.
It is a little different, like
It
that
is.
is a weird structure. Yeah.
okay. And we're going to make that change to the report, so it's coming back. On January 15th or December 15th.
I think it's December 15th, 25.
All right,
That way we can get after it next year.
and that is going to be for a proposed fee for,
All,
oh, you want it for all of them, or?
well, for all of the things covered in two,
All right, so aerosol coating products, coating related products, and non-industrial filters.
right,
Okay,
and we'll still follow up with whether this bill, whether 319 is already gonna go to finance.
But do you think it was already gonna go to finance?
I mean, well, if this goes in.
Yeah,
that-
Well, this definitely will, but would the underlying bill,
I can
Well-
double check with.
that would be good to do. Okay. Thanks, great, thank you, and, I know we only have you for a limited time. We do have a new draft of 319. But if we include this, we'll have a new draft, so, yeah, let's wait
Okay,
in going through 319. I'd love to, move to talking about stormwater. 481. And I realize we don't have all the information you probably want at this moment, but would love to keep making progress. If you have some changes to show us in a new draft, if I'm not mistaken.
yes. They're not extensive, but there are changes.
Okay.
And I just.
So this one should have a.
Thank you.
Yes, it should be on
Thank
our
you.
tables.
Great.
Yes, 411, 1209.
Yeah, so this is micrograding pledge council, you should have a draft number 1.1, the April 11th date and 1209 timestamp. And you will see that there are changes that are highlighted throughout. On page 1, lines 19 and 20, with regard to the permitting requirement for 3 acres. You were concerned that not all property owners were getting a notice that they were subject to the permit. And this would require the secretary to provide notice to all owners of property subject to the permit required under this subdivision. So everything under C7, which is 3 acres. Did I move on?
Yes, because this, well, I just want to be clear, so this, as I'm looking at the previous, as passed by the House version, this section was not
Not in,
in it,
right.
but this is where this goes.
This is where this would go, because this is the actual 3 acre permit.
Okay.
On page 2. In the exemption from stormwater permitting, you have that language. About the municipality assuming full responsibility. You wanted that to, say municipal special assessment fee instead of impact fee. And so, there was also a question here. What should it say, page 2, line 11, when a municipality assumes or has assumed responsibility? You've made that change in a later section, but you did not ask for that change here.
So like on line 11,
Yes,
when municipality assumes full legal responsibility for stormwater as municipality may assess.
remember there's a couple of grant programs later on or financing programs later on
Oh, yeah.
where you had said. We want to be clear that when the municipality assumes or has already assumed.
Yeah.
So that same question is here. Would they be exempt if they have already assumed legal responsibility?
Yeah, I think we should. Right, if somebody already has it and there's an ongoing impact. Whereas special assessment that is continuing, then it shouldn't just happen the one time. So I agree, yeah, it should be more.
But I didn't want to make that change and.
Yep.
Wasn't requested, so I will make that.
If there's any objections. Good.
Moving on from there. You can skip ahead quite a bit, actually. To. Page 8. And this is, exactly what
Oh,
we're
yeah.
talking about. Where the municipality assumes or has assumed full legal responsibility for the stormwater system. And, it's a municipal implementation financing program. And then. Skipping ahead. Actually, that's it.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
There was just a discussion in Senate Ag about addressing 3 acre for ag fairs. And they don't know what they're going to do yet, but they're engaged with A&R in that discussion.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Okay, so I had a question. On. I'm going off the as passed by the House version, I'll have to see if I can find the right spot. The last part of section 6. It's about the grant. Or the financial assistance program.
Page 7 of it has passed.
Oh, yeah, page 7 of the as passed. So in reading through Mr. Kamen's written testimony, which was. I don't know if anybody else has gotten a chance to look at it, but it's quite long and very good. There's a lot of great stuff in there. This part, he mentioned that he sees this as expansive and not restricting, that it is not prohibiting them from giving financial assistance to municipalities who don't put on who don't assume the full responsibility. And I am feeling like I wanna make that really clear that it's expansive and not restricting.
So on page 6, so the draft that I handed out,
Mhm.
Which features that on?
page 6.
I have it on page 7 of the draft you passed down.
Oh, really?
Oh, maybe I'm wrong about that. No,
1.112.
I'm wrong.
Yeah, so you're looking at section 6, correct?
Looking at section 6.
But are you looking at section 927, 10 BSA 927? or-
Yes, it's page 8.
Starts on 6. Starts on 6.
Starts on 6.
All right, yeah, so which program are we in? Develop lands implementation or municipal stormwater implementation?
I think it's in municipal stormwater, but
Okay,
Sections.
so then I think what Neil is looking for is that it doesn't focus on the municipality as assuming or has assumed. I think he wants it to be for municipality to comply with a permit for impervious surface of 3 acres or more. And then you can say whether it's for the municipality or a residential subdivision within the municipality. I think that's what he's looking for. He expressed some concern about having it assumes legal responsibility in this section and how he thought that might be limiting. And if you remove that and clarify that it's available for the municipality to comply with any 3 acre permit.
Even if they don't assume legal
Right, so
responsibility.
maybe it's the school. And the school remains the permittee, but the municipality applies for a permit for that.
Right, the school would remain the permittee, but the municipality could apply for the grant,
Yeah.
I see. Or the neighborhood association could be the permittee, but the
Remains the
town
permittee, but
could.
the municipality applies for funding. And I can work with Neil on what he wants his language to look like if you would prefer that.
I think I want to think about this for a minute. So he said DC, so in speaking about this language, he has it as page 8, section 6, which I think.
What page, what date was his, that's not
That is, so the date that I am looking at. He sent this,
Should be on the same page as what I handed out.
yeah,
was last Friday,
like where it is on the website.
yeah, I found it.
Oh, you did, okay. He says DC reads this added language as expansive as opposed to exclusionary. Municipalities can access financial assistance through the municipal stormwater implementation program for all types of municipal 3 acre projects, including where they're assuming full legal responsibility for a residential subdivision. And or private non-residential sites. This bill is not intended to force unwilling or unable municipalities into supporting private 3 acre sites. Yeah. So. Yes, go ahead.
I think if you look at the as past version, the very end of section 6, page 7.
Mhm.
It says the program should be available to the municipality compile a permit for further service 3 acres more. When the municipality assumes full legal responsibility, and I think he's saying they want to be able to do it absent
Mhm.
assuming full legal responsibility. And so that's the issue, is whether we take out that language
Mhm.
to allow the towns more, to allow more flexibility, just to fix the problem
Mhm.
without having to have a certain legal construct for it to do it.
And my hesitancy right now in saying this and bringing it up is that, I don't know if you can speak to the intent of the house, like were they trying to say, you can only get this money if you.
No, they were not.
They were not. Okay,
The point was brought up by the agency and committee, and it's because it says the program shall be available. There's still the lead-in language about this program being available to any municipality required to obtain or seek coverage on the municipal roads, municipal central storm sewer system, the 3-acre permit or a permit required to reduce the adverse effects of water quality from discharge of stormwater run. So the House committee said that already says it's available to more than just
Mhm.
those that the
Okay.
municipality assumes. But I think I understand Neil's point, and I think you can get to a place where it addresses his concerns while still being clear that it's available to those municipalities that assume.
I think I'm understanding this a little better now, and I'm more comfortable with this language now. Any better understanding of it, yes, go ahead.
Well. I think what you just said though, is if you look on page 7 of the draft you just gave us, line 16, so the secretary shall administer. The program. To provide grants to municipalities that do all those things. But it doesn't say that they shall give them grants for those things, so
It says to provide financial assistance for
right,
those things.
but it doesn't, if the shall is about the administering. And so I understand what Neil is saying, that maybe this is unclear that. That a municipality that doesn't assume full responsibility wouldn't be eligible. Because they're calling out a second shall. That, I think it makes it, I agree that with him that it's unclear. But I actually haven't read what he's said, I'm just understanding based on what you're telling me instead, so that's, I think maybe we should have him.
Yeah, I'm also not sure that he's objecting to anything here, he's just interpreting what he sees this language as doing. He reads it as permissive. Bill's not intended to force unwilling or unable municipalities into supporting private 3-acre sites. I think as I read that, I had the concern of like, is it clear that we're not forcing anybody to do anything? Yeah,
So
to get us.
from a municipality standpoint, the LCT said. It's gonna take a lot more money than what we're putting up.
Mhm.
I wanna make sure that we're gonna tell the municipalities they have to do it. That there's money available, it's kind of like the ARPA funds when they came into the municipality. Here's $1 million. And they didn't have a plan, they didn't have the people in place, the FTE to administer it and make sure it got distributed. And I wanna make sure that every municipality that needs it gets it. But I don't see that mechanism in
Mhm. Well, municipalities could apply for this financial
there. Right,
assistance.
they don't have anybody in place, and most of the small municipalities in my district don't have people in place to do it.
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying, is we're gonna tell them they gotta do something, we gotta make sure that we provide them. Number one, you gotta tell them they have to do it, and number two, you gotta give them the resources.
Mhm.
They're gonna have to hire somebody to write the grants to get the money.
Yeah, I mean, it makes me wonder about the regional stormwater utility,
Right.
as,
That's what I'm talking.
but that, you know, is that enough? And
I mean, I think it's a
good
good,
question.
a good plan. I don't think we've got the money that's available to make sure the plan is successful.
So there is the Rural Economic Development Initiative that's run through DHCD. That was set up to apply for grants for small municipalities. When municipalities, and it's only available to rural municipalities, so. There is an alternative already for municipalities to seek assistance for grant applications.
What is that called again?
Rural Economic Development Initiative, and it's run through DHCD.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so, knowing that we are not gonna be done with this today, yes, go ahead.
Let's ask Mike, this. On page 8. The language that says the program shall be available, is this added to language? Or is it,
It's not limiting money,
so
and that's Neil's point.
so it almost could say, it doesn't have to, but this word would be. This program shall also be available.
Or the program may be available, or the secretary may award assistance under this program to municipalities that assume responsibility. I think you can condition that sentence to address Steve's concern.
Almost just by adding the word also, right?
Pardon?
Almost just by adding the word also.
Yes.
To make clear that it's additive.
That makes sense to me, just to make sure it's abundantly clear. So that is page 8 of the new draft. Or like additionally, also, yeah, either way. Okay, great. In terms of walking through the bill, I mean, I know we're gonna have a lot to say when we get to the study, but. Just thinking about where we left off in walking through this. And I think it was, or in the as passed version, it was. We had been talking about tiers and. See, we have like 15 minutes left with you.
But I think you were in section 7, on the Clean Water Fund priorities. And you were asking how those priorities were set and fulfilled. And the priorities are set by statute. I can't remember who was here at that walkthrough that said that they consider the first tier to be for the non-regulatory programs where there is no necessarily a permit required, and the entities are doing projects to reduce load or otherwise improve water quality that are away from a regulatory requirement. And that's pretty consistent with honestly, with just kind of environmental principles that you provide the first tier of funding priority to those that are doing projects voluntarily and those that are not subject to a regulatory program.
I have a note about that, it is mostly for ag.
So on page 9, lines 1 and 2, the ag water quality program is not self-funded with the fees that it assesses under its ag programs. So it gets a significant appropriation each year as a first tier priority. I think it's been as much as $5 million. I'm not sure what it is this year.
Okay.
And so that's tier one, and then next tier two is generally the funding for projects that are subject to regulatory requirements, whether it's the stormwater implementation program that you just looked at, which is available to municipalities to meet any of those multiple stormwater permits. Whether it's for, the BMPs for on ag land, or if it's for flooding reduction. So that's the second tier. And then the third tier is the developed lands program, which is really that program that was in section 6, that's really for private property owners that are subject to regulatory requirements necessary to achieve water quality standards.
And because we've got this new language in C, this is making 3-acre projects eligible for this tier 2 money, is that accurate? Or setting,
So in E, 3 acre is already eligible under the municipal grant, municipal stormwater implementation program.
under 3, the third tier, right?
No, it's available under 2C.
Okay, yeah,
For municipal stormwater, and it's available under 3 for private property owners subject to 3 acre. But not just 3 acre, it's for any regulatory requirement.
okay. And this is the $1,000, or I'm sorry, the $1 million a year set out annually.
That goes to the municipal program. And not to the developed lands program.
We had some comments on that, recently, some folks being, opposed to setting aside $1 million a year annually for the 3-acre permits. We had also talked about the possibility of having $1 million annually up to a certain date, so that it's not just forever, as a way to mitigate that concern. Thoughts on that?
Who objected to $1 million for free?
The conservation districts, opposed that, and I think there was, some other, was it RPCs? There was somebody else who raised it as a concern. Yeah,
As a permanent thing.
right. Thoughts?
Just
Yes,
like
go
it-
ahead.
You know, as long as, somebody's keeping track of progress, you don't need the money. But I'm seeing that we'll probably end up with more properties on the list. But, you know, we're just talking about Lake Champlain right now. We're talking about, Mega, or, and this, right?
Yeah.
But we still got the Hudson River watershed on, that goes through Bennington County there. You know, and they're looking at, you know, this project is capturing the goal for the TMDL, the phosphorus, so. It may eventually go away, but I think.
Yes, go ahead.
I think their point is that the money wouldn't go away, it would still be there, but this calls it out and says that this is taking it away from the potential to be used for other purposes. So I think their concern was doing that permanently could pull money away from other projects that are getting more bang for your buck in the TMTL. So,
My concern, $1 million may not be enough,
oh yeah, it's
so.
entirely possible, but no.
And the other concern I got is that the municipalities that really need it are prioritized. That if the money gets earmarked for those municipalities. Because typically what happens is the people that are set up, the people that write the grants, get the money. And then some of the municipalities will, where'd they get that money? They don't know about it, so a lot, part of it's education.
Mhm.
for information.
Other thoughts on making modifications to this section?
I'm sympathetic to the argument of the client, conservation districts. and
Mhm.
disease.
Are you, what are you thinking in terms of,
Just the permanent part.
so adding a sunset to that carve out?
Yeah, something like that, I do think that there's a competition of dollars and I really try the conservation spending it with work, so.
Yeah, so one, if we were to set a sunset, one possibility is that we make it match the pushed out deadline, which I think was 2028.
Yeah.
So we could have it go through fiscal year 28. Another possibility is that just the further pushed out deadlines are 2038 for the other watersheds that you were talking about. So I feel like that's sort of the choice. My sense at this point is to make it 28 and then we can reevaluate. At that point. Yes. Michael, does that give you enough information?
Know what I need to do.
Okay. Cool. I have a note here about that we could add something like this similarly to the developed lands program. Oh, do we want to carve out from the developed lands program? But I think,
Oh, you mean a specific, at least an amount for the development program?
I think we should just leave that and move on.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, yes, go
Did
ahead.
we, just for the next draft, shifting gears a little bit on this, under section 10, the study committee. The RPC were looking first, like, it makes sense to have a seat on it, yeah,
They are not currently on here.
yeah. Well, and VEC said something to the RPC, sure, but.
So add the RPGs.
Yeah, that's kind of, give the RPC so that.
Mhm.
But are we gonna have a further conversation about this study after we hear
Yeah.
that from Neil?
Yeah, so. I'm gonna note that, just because we should consider the involvement of the RPCs, but I agree, like, we're gonna have to go through the study in more detail. Whether we want to expand this one, have a separate one, expand some scope.
Has the agency asked for changes?
No, you mean to the study?
Mm-hmm.
They have not, but just out of conversation testimony that we got, it seemed like there were more things that were worth looking into, perhaps prioritization, perhaps. It feels like there are some, I guess I would say legal challenges that we need some path forward. So,
We might ask the agency to come back and report to us on certain information, and do a study committee. But we asked Neil for a bunch of information, so hopefully he's coming back, and maybe they already have it, and you don't have to ask him for it, but. He's on tomorrow, is that right, or?
tomorrow is Thursday. What did we get here? Oh, yes, we have him on schedule for tomorrow.
Okay.
So just, I can see you're wondering what we're thinking, just, I mean, the discussion kind of went around, how do we get? So it's because this is a huge program of a lot of cost. We do not have money to really substitute what bits we're putting into our just in the trough and bucket. So the question is, how do we prioritize, so how do we gain maximum phosphorus reduction? Not just by throwing the blanket with the entire prioritize. There's something we're thinking about with that being the study.
As part of a regional utility?
No, not necessarily part of it. That's why
Right,
possibly
yeah.
the second study
Right,
came up.
or a report, just but something separate from the regional stormwater utility. I actually have a list of things of other, just
And
Resolve.
Neil can't provide that priority list right now.
Well, it sounds like he has some of it, but we may want to use that priority list to reconsider how, either how the deadlines roll or how the money is spent,
Or how they're mapping over.
yeah, right, and who's caught. Yeah. So, but just so you know, I mean, I can send you this list, other things that are on my radar. Investigate how other states are addressing stormwater, in residential and commercial properties. Second one, recommend a path for compliance in neighborhoods in which not all the homeowners are willing to form an HOA. Third one being recommend guidelines, for equity when dealing with properties that have effluent coming from upstream properties that are not covered. And then investigate any other options for dealing with orphan permits. And potential prioritization of properties, staggered deadlines. And then, or I'm gonna add to this, like, examining who is caught by this. And perhaps with an eye to effective use of funds. Yes,
I
good.
think somewhere we can put that in a document, because those are all excellent. Yeah, I probably would.
Like a bill?
I mean, I can send that list to
Sure.
you all. These are just the, you know, from testimony, things I heard that felt unresolved, and so how do we?
I mean, I can go back through the YouTube video and.
I can type this up and say, I mean, I have to type, I'm gonna type. So, okay. Yeah, so anyway, just so you know, those are sort of things on my radar, which feel like they're not strictly stormwater utility regionalization.
No, and there is some language in there about how to address inequity and
Yes.
how to do assessment, but it's not detailed.
And those are a lot of things, I realize that'd be a lot to do with this. Okay,
So takeaway, we're 319,
mhm,
adding paint with the changes to the fee section. And the report back. Here, I'm going to sunset the municipal implementation grant program. Minimum appropriation of $1 million in 2028. Gonna make a couple of other minor changes, and then I'll bring that back, but we're also waiting on Neil. And what he's providing, whether or not that informed more changes to 480.
mhm.
Okay.
That all sounds good to me. Okay. Did you have?
Well, just
something?
questions.
Yes, sure.
Process questions.
Yep.
So, we put the sunset in.
Yep.
What's the flag that, if this is coming due? And, you know, if we don't take a raise sunset, it's gonna go away.
Mm-hmm,
We actually have I don't call it a database, but we have a tracking document for sunsets.
At Lake Council.
Because when we didn't, people would be like, oh my gosh, this is not that. Why didn't you tell us?
The world is falling.
Like, because you put a sunset 10 years ago.
thank you for tracking this. Okay,
Thanks.
great, I would love to, take a 10-minute break, be back at 5 of, and then have a conversation on budget. Until 11:15, so we'll be back at 5:11.
You need to, on the iPad, you need to hit the microphone to stop the sound. Just the microphone.
So are you gonna click outside that?
Sure.
Or X out of
Time,
it.
I guess.
Finance.
Probably the
Okay.
Okay, I think we are live and also hearable, that's not a word.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
audible, that's a better word. Okay, all right, so we, this is Senate Natural Resources and Energy coming back from a break, and we are, before we get to testimony, from Mr. Four at 11:15, wanted to revisit our budget letter. And I think that, I don't know if this is posted on our website yet. I think I forwarded you all, I forwarded you all a document.
When, last Friday is, I'm not clear what you want posted.
Did you all get you all did get an email from me last night,
Yeah.
yes. That was like the new version of the budget letter, it's like
Yes, I
charts.
got it.
Yeah,
Yep.
okay. Drew, did I send that to you?
I'll check, and if I have it, I'll post it.
Okay, fabulous, it should just look, it's got the same heading, but then instead of 3 sections, I just made it a chart, just to make it easier to organize. And hopefully Senator Hardy joins us soon because she had communicated with me about wanting to add some pieces. And I don't want to speak for her. So we'll start with this. Do the parts that are in there now look okay? Do you need a minute to get there? No worries. I don't think it's. It should be in your email. I don't, unless,
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong place.
I think it
from when?
would have been last night.
Oh,
Um,
actually,
tax day.
from. Mickey. Who would it be from?
Sorry, say again?
Who would it be from?
It would have been from me.
Oh, there it is, okay, oh yeah, I looked at it, okay.
Yeah, just wanting
Yeah.
to run this by you all. My understanding is that Senator Hardy was interested in some additions to this. But maybe we can circle back to this when she is back in the room. But others, any other thoughts on this draft, or does this look okay to you? It's okay, no worries. Terry, you're feeling okay then? No?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't see anything from you last night. I see
really?
some. Yeah, I don't, maybe it's in cyber world. I see other things you sent me, but not a budget letter. Or at least nothing with an attachment.
Oh, that's noted. Updated budget letter, okay. You know, Jude, I'm gonna forward it to you right now. I think maybe I did not include you on that email, which I should have.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Okay, so that is sending to you right now. So any other thoughts on this?
Just a question.
Yes.
Conservation district funding,
Mm-hmm.
we talked about, that affect, RPCs. Is that gonna conflict with any of the funding that they get, or will they be getting any?
Well, not in this letter.
Good, thank you.
Right, so they do some similar work, but it's, at this point, it's not that we're saying fund this instead of that. Does that make sense?
I actually think you had here. That's what we talked about.
Right, and just to point out that land use review board, it looks a little different than the way we talked about it. Just because
6 months.
exactly, like because we had the. Right, 2 positions for half a year. And one of them was in base, so I split that 145 in half. Basically to say that this is what we wanted to add to base and this is what we wanted for the one time. So it's a year, that's really logical too. Okay, great. So just to flag it, the things that that Senator Hardy had brought up included funding for the PCB remediation, wanting to revisit that, as well as a lawyer for A&R and a
For the
kind of super funds. Yep.
For the what?
Kind of
Kind of super fun. And I think there was anything.
What's the first thing we said?
Oh, the PCB remediation.
Oh, it's adding back that 5 million.
Mhm.
It's not there.
Right. how about this, since she is not here, we will, but, actually, let me back up. You all are okay with this version of the letter at this point? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, and when Senator Hardy's back, we can revisit it. How are you doing, Mr. Gore?
I'm doing great.
Okay, great.
How are you?
Good. I know that we had you on for 11:15 and we're a little ahead of that. It's now okay?
Yeah, Jude did let me know that 11 might be.
Okay,
Early.
amazing. You're so good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jude.
Jude is so good.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so we may revisit this today. I just, in terms of being timely for the appropriations committee, I didn't wanna sit on this, but I'm hoping to hear from Julie more about this more tomorrow. So we won't take a straw poll on it yet, but if it comes up in appropriations, I can at least point at like these things for now. Okay, so we're gonna transition from the budget letter to a bill that we haven't talked about in a little while, H 125. In which the Public Service Department's named. Thank you for being here. We'd love to hear your, so just to reorient ourselves, this report on a variety of energy related metrics. And do you all need a minute to transition or are you good?
Yeah, we're just looking at the as passed.
Yes, yes.
What was it?
It's H 125.
I don't know if we've ever seen a paper copy of it.
We walked through it with I believe it was Ellen and Laura Sebelius. We do have a.
Yeah.
We have a paper copy
Somewhere.
somewhere.
It's also on the website if
Oh,
that's
yeah,
easier.
Okay, just want to make sure that we're all ready here.
As passed by.
Yeah, as passed by the House. Okay, and I think we're ready to turn it over to you. Thank you.
All right, great. For the record, TJ Bohr, Director of Regulated Utility Planning at the Public Service Department. And thank you for having me today. I have a commission hearing that I need to be at tomorrow. I think ideally, Secretary Moore may have gone first, because I believe it's actually their responsibility in the legislation. So, but
We're gonna hear from her tomorrow.
right,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, and I just couldn't make it tomorrow, so, thank you for having me today. And generally, as we understand it, the goal of the legislation is to provide info that would support policy discussions and decisions in the state, which we are fully committed to and ensuring that policymakers, you all and us and others in the state have all the available relevant info at hand in order to make decisions. We do want to point out that much of the information that is requested here in the initial report is already collected. And I think that was, it's already published. We went over a lot of it actually in the annual energy report when I came in at the beginning of the session. And I want to caution that, a new report that reports a lot of the same information that you already get, it may not be the best use of resources. The last section of the report, which asks A&R to report on the analysis of the data and recommendations of any other data necessary to illustrate impacts of the changing energy landscape, especially going forward. That we think is really the most valuable piece of this legislation.
Did you say it again, which part?
Like the last part where it's looking forward, where it's, I think it's provision C. Little c, line 13 of page 2, yeah. And then C2, 3, and 3 in particular. It's really analyzing the data and recommendations of, well, the way we talked about this when we were discussing the bill and in the House with leading indicators. So a lot of the things that we report in the annual energy report that are asked for here are lagging indicators. They may be a year old or a year or two old, and we really need to look forward and say, okay, well, what is going to happen? And what's the trajectory here? What type of indicators are kind of foreshadowing what's going to happen next? And to that part of the report that is analyzing what
what those should be and how to collect that information and how to present it. That I think is the most valuable piece of the legislation, because then we can also assess what kind of resources are necessary to capture that data. And so I think that's one of the reasons why it ended up being a one-time report with this going forward. So next session, we can actually put in place those resources that might be necessary to kind of get to those leading indicators. I also just want to note a lot of the I think Secretary Moore will probably talk about this tomorrow, that where they are working on the measuring and assessing progress tool as part of the Climate Action Office's responsibilities. And a lot of the work that's embodied in this legislation is happening there. And so I just wanted to flag that for you to be ready for tomorrow. So that's kind of like the high level, and I have I thought it might be valuable to kind of just go through each of the provisions here in little b of the initial report data, so that you all are aware of what these items that are being asked to be collected from the Public Service Department's perspective of what we have now, what's actually a lift, what might not be able to be done, and what is new. That works, but
That'd be helpful.
okay. First in provision 1, the current and forecasted rates and the number of customers with EV rates. So we do have the current rates and estimate of the number of customers with EV rates in the annual energy report already. The forecast is new. But that's something that, as a matter of course, the department under Commissioner Johnson is committed to doing regularly anyway. So that so we're now considering that as like something we do already. And so that is but the rest of it is already in there, at least at a statewide level. I think we would expect to see at least some comparison from by utility in the future as well, so you can see the different utility rates.
I'm not familiar with this idea of electric vehicle rates. Can you explain that a little bit?
Right, so each utility is actually required to have special electric vehicle rates by last year, unless they got leave from the Public Utility Commission, that extension, some of the smaller utilities.
Yeah.
But really what electric vehicle rates are, GMP and Burlington Electric and Vermont Electric have had for a little while, it's like an end use specific rate, a rate specific to electric vehicles where they're different. They differ by utility, but they could be a time of use rate where you just have, if you're charging from 4 in the afternoon to like 8 at night, you may pay more than you charge the rest of the time because it costs the utility more at that time. Those rates are generally still structured to cover all of the embedded costs in the utility, and then pay for the additional power supply costs associated with it. And they get value for the utility by not putting demand on during those peak times. And so there's a number of different ways you can structure an EV rate. You can have it the customer's responsibility to really actively do something. It could be more of a passive, like I just described. You just are on this rate and it depends on when you plug in. And it is just very specific to that one end use.
Do you have to have an EV to use that rate?
Some of the EV rates you have to have, there are also time of use rates that would that you do not have to have an EV to use.
Okay.
So you can have just your EV kind of separately metered and be on that rate.
Oh, you get a separate meter, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to follow up on that, because the way I had understood this was that EV rates were for the rates that you charge like an independent freestanding charging station or from a charging station versus like the one that's in your home that's connected to your home meter. Is that not accurate?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question because I was thinking of it as the rates that a utility, all of the rates that utilities offer, whether they're, customer rates or public charging rates. And so they do actually have those rates as well. So this would be asking for both. They're separate.
Right.
They are separate.
Okay, because as I have understood things as well, like that there's a lot of variation in those sort of freestanding charging stations, like we might have downtown versus in a garage, that there's a lot of variability between those rates. That's what I have heard. I'm absolutely willing to be wrong with that, but which I think is an interesting thing, right? Like what is the equity around charging station rates?
Right.
I feel like there's some interest, but you're saying that's not strictly what this is.
That's not my understanding of this. I
Okay.
think that this is more because it's talking about the number of customers that are on the EV rate. So when we get we buy an EV, are you joining an EV rate or not?
Mhm.
And going to that, there's a lot of private companies that can, a private company can just put a charging station in, downtown Montpelier or wherever, right? When that gets to your point, is that they can charge different rates as long as they're published and, clear to the consumer. They have the ability to do that, and there was legislation several years ago that gave them the authority. Those rates are not under the jurisdiction of the Public Utility Commission either.
Mhm. Oh, interesting.
No.
Okay.
They're managed by actually the Ag Department, Agency of Ag.
Oh, interesting.
Under the weights and measures, and so they don't necessarily look at the economics of the rate. It is more just that what they're looking at is did those charging stations deliver the kilowatt hours that they said they delivered, and that type of measurement, similar to gas stations.
Interesting. And so when we talk about the customers, the number of customers, we're talking the kinds of customers we're talking about are homeowners.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions about this particular one? Okay, great. Yeah. So this one, not a heavy lift.
I don't believe so. No, we're already second.
Okay.
The second one, the total amount of distributed generation, I'm paraphrasing here from Northwich, including the amount installed by county, and then any active certificate of public goods. So in the annual energy report now, we report on the total amount of interconnected distributed generation that's already provided, and not a heavy lift to report again, although just circling back to it is reporting it again. The active certificate of public goods is a little problematic in that is a labor intensive task for whomever ends up doing it. So that is new. There is a current database of certificate of public goods as filed, but each of those items needs to be exported and it's in a PDF type format, and going through that's what makes it labor intensive. There's a lot of certificates of public good for small units. I think we have over 20,000 different solar plants in the state now. And there's not a mechanism now to match up what is already interconnected or which ones are. There could be a CDG application and it gets amended, and then it gets amended again, and that's like 3 applications instead of 1. And so there's just a lot of data cleaning that has to go on. So this one is actually a heavy lift. And I think that if I would recommend taking that out and having that be in the future report of the recommendation of how we make that not such a heavy lift. I think, you know, the department has some ideas on that, but I think those would be best suited for this process where we can talk with utilities and the commission. It can report on that.
It makes me wonder about the intent of this and see if there's a way to get at the intent in a way that is not as heavy a lift. Any active certificate of good public good applications.
Yeah, I
I want to dig into that one.
I think the intent is good, so I don't wanna, I wanna find a way to guess on it, so. The intent really, it's like to get to that leading indicator so that we can see. Before we're in the interconnection spot and reporting on interconnections to be able to see, hey. The applications have like tripled based on the policy that we have or they have, right, and like to. You know, understand that, and then maybe we can take action before we've had like 2 years of going down the wrong path, whichever direction it is. So the intent, I think, is really good. It's just, it is a bit of a lift, and if there's if there's a way in this, the by December report to ease that, maybe it's just the bigger ones, which are less, that could be one way, or that would be helpful.
So,
Yeah,
so this means applications under active consideration.
Correct. So, but I think anytime there's an application, right, that they could be, it could be open, how many we got, we don't know if they've actually been built, even if it's been approved. I actually think it would be, the way we would see it is there's a difference between the applications and what actually gets interconnected, right? And that's what we're trying to get to. Those net metering ones are automatically approved after 15 days unless somebody objects. Maybe it's 30, but I think it's 15. And so just to distinguish what you said, I think we're trying to look at even those that are approved and, did they actually get interconnected or not? We won't necessarily know, let's see the number of applications.
So there's really a few things going on then potentially here, right? So one is applications submitted. Another one is applications approved. Then the third thing, whether they've actually been connected.
Correct.
So there's a few things going on here, and I get what they're trying to do, because they want to, like, as you say, where we headed.
Right. I think the fourth one would even be what the interconnection was relative to the application, because we get sometimes a lot of applications for 15 kW and then 12 gets interconnected, or and understanding kind of that difference would be helpful also.
it's interesting.
So I don't have specific language now, but I'd be happy to work with a member to try and make that more workable for the report.
Yes.
Would there be any value in having, instead of having to say by county in the active, just to have the part of the projections? Say
Projections of just how many, in general, how many applications we would expect.
yeah. Or combination of applications you expect and new connections next 5 years or what. You probably have to do some of the same research to figure that out.
Right. Yeah, I think that is true, and I would want to think about the best way to do that, because there may be additional data or reporting that may be useful to make that happen, that it could be useful for the legislature to say in session, well, this is the reporting that we need to make that forecast available. That could be by utilities or in what is in mapping the interconnection to the CBG number, for example, that's like an annual task right now.
So, yeah, well,
Did you raise this question in the House?
Very briefly, the way this came together in the House was, there was like back and forth offline, and then this list got put out there, and then it got passed quickly, so, so not as explicitly as a man. Yeah.
I feel like I wanna do a little bit of digging into this one to find out what the intent. Like, you know, is there a suspicion that someone is trying to confirm, or is, you know what I mean, like what kind of data is, like, what's the purpose? Cause at least it's not, maybe it's clear to you, but it's not as clear to me, so.
I mean, frankly. I'll give you this insight to some of the state agency process. We were brainstorming ideas for what could be the leading indicators and come out of the December report. And I think this one actually ended up in the initial, let's report on it now, and it meant to be the later one.
Okay.
And it got proposed, I think, even perhaps by state agencies when this came together, and then there wasn't time before it got passed to modify, so that is what it is, I
Yeah,
guess,
yeah,
part of the
that's-
process, but I just want,
Yeah.
that's my understanding of what happened. There may have been other things that happened as well, so
Okay, well, that's good context.
I am I'm gonna skip to number 4. We don't have insight on the number of sellers of heating fuel sales at the department, and or might have that, so I'm gonna skip to number 4. And the number of homes receiving centralized weatherization services by income level and county. As I understand it, some of this will be included in the initial measuring and assessing progress tool. As I understand it, it's going to be low income and non-low income. And so if the intent is on this one to do more than that, then I just don't want to set the expectation that we're going to do it by like the 5 census income brackets here, because I don't believe that data exists.
Question about that, I mean, this, cause the weatherization work that's done, but say it's low income, there's a whole department, right?
Right.
Or part of the department that deals with low income weatherization, and that's under DCF.
Correct.
And so, I guess I'm just noticing that they are not listed as a consulted group here. This in section 1, and I realize I'm asking you to comment on something that's like kind of outside of your your department, strictly speaking, but so maybe I'll ask this a different way, like, so do you feel like you all have the data for number 4? Or would you be outsourcing that to DCF?
Well, we partner with DCF and the Office of Economic Opportunity, and I think we wouldn't have trouble getting that data from them, so I don't think it's necessary for you to add them here. You could, and it wouldn't be, that's, we report on the number of weatherizations and low income weatherizations, for the annual energy report, and then, annually already. So, it's just the different income brackets that I just wanted to flag.
So not heavy lift.
Yeah, as long as it's confined to low income and low income, yeah. The last main one that I will discuss is the firms and workers in thermal and renewable energy sector trades. We have the Vermont Clean Energy Industry Report that we've been doing for 6-7 years now as part of the Clean Energy Development Fund's work. at our office, and so the renewable energy sector trades have been a part of that for years, and we haven't moved on that. It does not report on the thermal sector, specifically. It does, you know, it has guardrails for solar, it talks about energy efficiency, but it doesn't have report on, you know, electricians or weatherization workers specifically. So I think that is a new thing. And then I also just want to point out that that report is federally funded, and it's unclear whether we're gonna have the funding this year to do that report. We hope to be able to make it work. It's not, you know, it's actually not a ton of money because Vermont was one of the first states to do it, and the rest of the country has built off of Vermont's effort. And so we kind of get a benefit from that. But it is still federally funded, and to the extent that that money is uncertain, then doing that research is uncertain. And so I just want to caution on that one as well, that it could turn into a lift and something that we don't have.
So a couple of questions about that. One is that report that you're talking about comes out annually.
Correct.
And so we would have data for the last 4 years.
Correct.
Anyway, so
Yes.
so that's really a question of like, do we have it for this most recent year?
On the renewable energy sector part.
Right, on renewable energies.
Right, the thermal sector, the data is less detailed, you know, if we're just talking about energy efficiency, or we could. You know, we could ask OEO, you know, how many workers are in the weatherization agencies that deliver, and, you know, Efficiency Vermont probably make an estimate, but that's for at least this year. They'll have that for 5 years historically. So I just, that one worries me about not delivering what you want. And so, and I don't disagree that it's good data to be wanting, but I just. Be clear what's available, it's not.
So we can ask OEO for employment numbers in this sector. We can ask about efficiency. I'm wondering if it just makes more, it would make sense to make it more detailed, but maybe. But anyway, it's good to flag it as that it's not, it may not be robust.
Right. Okay, so then the next several are related to the Agency of Transportation. I believe that's right, is coming in tomorrow also with A&R, and I believe that it has all of that transportation data, and it's not that it reflects. And then we also have, you know, total fossil consumption, total electric consumption, and we have total state GDP, and that's just that last number 10 there. And so that is not a difficult number to find either.
Number 10 is not difficult, isn't it?
I don't believe so.
So all you do is division.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. I knew it's an easy number to provide. The insight is it's basically how efficient is our energy use, or what are we getting as economic output per, you know, dollar spent or total, you know, BTUs delivered in each sector. That how useful that is going forward is, I don't know exactly how we want to use that going forward. You know, we continually want to get more, and historically we have gotten more economic output for energy use in the state. We want to continue that trend, but I don't know how leading of an indicator that really is to say what we want to do going forward.
Well, I mean, I would think that I'm having to talk more about this tomorrow, as I understand that the secretary suggested this one, but I would think that we would want to see that trend line go down as in terms of fossil fuel and electricity consumption per unit of economic output, right? Because we want a strong economy and we want to use less just for efficiencies, but of course, population growth being what it is, you know,
Yes,
we might end up seeing feels like there's a population factor in there as well. All I'm saying is I'm wondering what is the hope for that trend line? Are you hoping for it to go up or are you hoping for it to go up?
well, it's funny because I actually was thinking about it in the reverse, it just depends on which one you put as a denominator.
Right.
Yeah, we want more economic output per unit of energy used,
In which case we should.
yeah, or we want less usage per unit of economic output, which is what's written now, so.
Right, exactly.
That's how you said it, so either way, I think is useful.
Fair enough, yes, thank you, yes, go ahead.
Well, wait, maybe you should just finish. I have a more broad question about the bill. So. We should finish your testimony and then ask you.
Okay, so I just would close by, the things that I sort of touched on this, I think, but the preview of the types of things that I would envision that are identified in the future going report are just areas where our infrastructure is insufficient or becoming more expensive. And how to collect that data if it's already available, where we might need resources to collect it. I hope that we would identify the most useful ways to actually track energy price changes, whether it's by utility territory, by income focus, and kind of identify the best indicators that we want to track going forward. Mapping can be useful, and I think that gets to the graphic displays, which, as I understand it, that specific words where it's kind of optimized language to ensure that we weren't kind of over committing to what might be capable mapping wise. But just that those can be useful tools to understand going forward, whether it's public transit or renewable energy projects, and highlighting the need for potential areas of investment. We talked about jobs and really monitoring job growth in the clean energy sector. And that can allow us to assess training programs and identify other opportunities. And then, one of the things that was talked about a lot in the House were really assessing changes in like the number of gas stations, heating fuel sellers, et cetera, related businesses to, ensure that kind of economic stability for the areas. I think Representative Sibilia mentioned ensuring that there's not enough gas station deserts. And that I do see us looking to try and meet that. Yes. So a little of that is speculation, and I'll flag it as that of like what I think might come out of that future going report. But again, circling back to that's where I think the most value of this legislation is turning this into leading indicators, so that we can have the best information in front of us and to stop there.
Okay, question, yes.
Yeah, so. You guys are not the lead on this, it's natural resources, correct? The Agency of Natural Resources, but. I mean, is this stuff all doable without additional resources? I mean, this seems like a pretty intensive report.
So there was there were a few things that I identified, a couple of them before you came in, that I was saying additional resources would be necessary. A lot of this is already reported in other places, in our annual energy report and some of the Agency of Transportation reports. And without going back through altogether, the CPG applications is a problematic one. And in number 2, and the firms and workers in.
Yeah, I heard that first, yeah.
Those are the 2. The forecasted rates is also hasn't been reported in annual energy reports, but I mentioned under Commissioner Johnson, we've committed to doing that as a matter of course as an agency anyway, and so
Okay,
so that's why it's in here and not being in here
okay.
from that perspective.
I'm just concerned about putting more burden on our agency or agencies when they're behind on all the real work that we want them to do.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for reporting and data analysis. It's really helpful and it's nice to have a one-stop shop report that you can hand people. But we have asked them to do so much lately and they're behind on it all, so I'd rather have them work on that. So I guess I'd like to know how much work is this gonna take?
It, so I raised some flags of where there would be.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
In my ideal outcome for this legislation, and we can talk to Secretary Martin, see if she shares this, but it would be that the, really just the forward going part of what's in, the C, starting on page 2.
But also include.
Yeah, that's the most valuable part of this legislation to me, and if just that went forward, that would be my ideal scenario, because I think we already report on most of this stuff, and really we'd be looking forward and present you with like here's the resources, here's what we think would be valuable, and here's the resources we need to do it in the next session.
Okay.
Okay,
No reason to teach me.
and we'll hear more about this from Secretary Morswell. Great. Great, anything else, any other questions? Super, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, so, I'm gonna move on to Mr. Ball and EAN. So in, looking at this bill, being about data, we know that EAN collects a lot of data, and so we are gonna watch your comments on H125 in general, but particularly since this is your first time here with us and EAN, the point of this time is just do a little bit of an introduction to the kinds of work that you do, and so that we can, I mean, it's just good for us to know anyway, because I think a lot of our work is it's based on, or should be based on data, so yeah. But actually, you know everybody here so far.
I know that from a list, not all in person.
I sent
So-
a party from the house. Nice to meet you.
Terry Williams from Raw.
Nice to meet you, Senator.
And of course, we know each other, and hopefully we'll be joined by some other senators soon. Just before you jump in, just so you know, I had we did have a little bit of budget letter conversation. No, it's okay. So I didn't want to speak for you. I did raise that, like, we may want some more discussion around PCVs, around attorney.
Yeah.
But we didn't, we just discussed the letter as it existed, and said, you know, some communication with you, so, but I figured we'd revisit that when you're back. But now we're missing these other two. So-
Did you want to finish that today or?
I think, because we're gonna have Julie Moore in tomorrow
Yeah.
anyway, so I don't think there is a harm at this point in approving it tomorrow.
Okay.
So that my sense is we should just do this now. We'll hear more from Julie Moore. We'll,
That sounds fine to me. Yeah.
okay.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Yep. Okay, so we'll turn it over to you.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair Watson, and members of the committee. Glad to be with you today. For the record, my name is Jared Duval. I serve in a couple of different roles that may be relevant, and I may need to speak in different capacities depending on the questions that come up. But as Chair Watson said, I serve as Executive Director of Energy Action Network, which is a nonprofit organization that serves statewide, filling a couple of key roles, but one is data tracking, research and analysis on Vermont's energy transition. looking at that from an energy use perspective, from an emissions perspective, from an economic perspective, both kind of statewide economics and consumer economics, we work to pull together information from the federal level, the state level, the local level, to make as much information available to make sure that Vermont's energy and climate conversation is grounded in and informed with the latest available data. We provide that transparently. I should note that we are an independent nonprofit organization. We do not take positions on bills before the legislature or administrative proceedings for or against. We do not engage in any lobbying. So that is one role, and we produced an annual progress report for Vermont each year on that you can see here. It's available online. I did bring physical copies that I would love to share with you in case you don't already have them.
I already have them.
Yeah, we'll hang on to this.
And then secondly, by way of introduction, because of the work that I do with EAN and my professional background, I was appointed by the Senate Committee on Committees to the Vermont Climate Council, where I serve in the seat to provide expertise in energy data and analysis, and serve on this and chair the Science and Data Subcommittee of the Climate Council. And so the important distinction there is that the Climate Council is required by the Global Warming Solutions Act to make policy recommendations to the legislature. So if there is a question about a bill before you, I can and am responsible to do so in my Climate Council role, but not on behalf of the organization that I work for. So I want to make that important clarification. If it's okay, I might go ahead and share slides. Great. So the first context I wanted to provide, and please, redirect me if another direction is more helpful, but it's just some context on the data tracking analysis that we are doing that is relevant to the conversation you're having about H125. So, we produce this annual progress report for Vermont each year. We work very closely with state agencies, federal agencies, local data partners to compile information that can help inform the statewide conversation on energy, on climate, on our economy. In addition to our annual progress report for Vermont, we also produce research papers, research briefs, and we host and annually update dashboards, statewide dashboards on the energy transition and on emissions. And I will get into that briefly. So for the Vermont Energy Dashboard, we are, this speaks to kind of some of the questions around the energy transition, the economic transition happening in Vermont, and where is it happening differently, either by county or region or by town. And so we collect data from Efficiency Vermont, from VGS, from Burlington Electric, from state weatherization programs, other data providers, to understand where we as a state stand both overall and then more locally in terms of some of these key indicators identified in the climate action plan for how we can reduce emissions and often reduce energy costs as well. So number of homes comprehensively weatherized, number of electric vehicles registered in the state, number of heat pump water heaters, number of heat pump system or units installed. And so that is available at eanvt.org. Here are some screenshots of the energy dashboard. You can, view it at statewide, you can view it at a county or RPC level, you can view it at a town level, you can look year by year, as you see in the upper right. You can compare where we stand relative to the targets that were identified in the climate action plan as part of the pathways modeling. And so when in that second part of H125, where it looks at kind of where is there regional variation, this may be a resource that will be of interest. again, these are the kind of energy measures that we are able to collect and provide data for in partnership with utilities and state data partners. So these are just some examples of, for instance, comprehensive number of homes comprehensively weatherized by town, by county, and by regional planning commission, visualized in a heat map format with more number of weatherizations per housing unit shown in the darker shades. And so these are just some of the then visualizations that can be created looking at, for instance, the aggregate total as of 2023, and then comparing to the prior year, the annual addition in terms of this is showing, for instance, the number of cold climate heat pumps. I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to make sure that you are aware of this resource and our gratitude to utilities and state agencies and departments in terms of making information available so that we can produce tools like this. This is looking at heat pump water heaters. This is looking at electric vehicles. For instance, again, I already mentioned that we're able to compare each of these kind of the pace of adoption in terms of some of these key technologies and measures relative to the targets in the climate action plan. And that is the link there. I recognize that I have limited time. In the slides that I shared with Jude, I have a whole number of slides that I doubt I'll be able to get to today. And I'd be happy to come back to discuss around what we're seeing around the economic transition and some of the key questions that are asked for in H125 that we have some insights on. If I can get to it, I will. But recognizing that my time is short and you're primarily focused on H125, I have some questions and observations on the bill, and because relates to the content of pending legislation, I should offer these questions and observations specifically in my capacity as a member of the Climate Council. So the first one is that in section 1B1, I might get the terminology wrong. It asks for current and forecasted electric rates, and then it goes on. And then in B3, it asks for fuel sales volumes. And I was struck by this discrepancy of wanting to know rates for electricity, but volumes for fossil fuel. And I'm wondering whether you would want to know both volumes and rates, prices, or costs for electricity and for heating fuels, or just one piece of information for different types of energy. Speaking as a counselor, my preference, my ideal is always to have as comprehensive and complete of information as possible. So I would recommend not just wanting to know what electric rates are, but what has electric usage been, which is available data. And on the fossil fuel side, not just the volume of fuel sold in terms of gallons, but what has that meant in terms of total spending on fossil fuels as well. A similar piece of feedback with relation to B6, it asks for reporting on gasoline and diesel fuel sales. It may be helpful to clarify if by fuel sales you mean by volume, i.e. gallons of diesel and gasoline, or by volume you mean the costs spent on that diesel and gasoline, or both. And my recommendation as a counselor would be both. Again, overall, I would recommend that we take a comprehensive view of this and look at total energy use and total energy spending in Vermont, broken down by type, not just kind of rates on one side and volumes on the other, so that we can have consistent apples to apples comparisons. I think this will be covered by folks who testify from the agencies, but I would note that much of this data is readily available. Statewide transportation fuels data is available from the tax department, as are fuel oil, kerosene, and propane sales. Fossil gas sales data is available from VGS. Mr. Poor noted the available data in the Energy Industry Report. Prices for these fuels are tracked. When it comes to fuel oil, kerosene, propane, monthly by the Public Service Department. There's also tracking that happens, although not consistently throughout the year, but during the heating season by EIA. The Public Service Department has very helpful information and accessible information on gasoline prices. VGS readily provides fossil gas or natural gas prices, diesel prices. We find via VTrans fuel price adjustment document. We do note that it has been difficult to find consistent data and up-to-date data with regard to prices of wood fuels, particularly wood chips and wood pellets in Vermont. But when we do look kind of comprehensively at energy use and cost, this is the type of information we're able to compile. So this is a snapshot from 2023. Total energy spending in Vermont estimated to be about a little over $3 billion. A little less than $1 billion of that on electricity. And then over $2 billion spent. There's been more than $2 billion spent statewide on fossil fuels for each of the last 3 years in Vermont. In the transportation sector, primarily gasoline and diesel. In the thermal sector, primarily propane and fuel oil, and then in the fossil gas. So this takes the tax department data, the VGS data, the monthly fuel price reports, and does some calculations to look at statewide. We don't have the numbers yet for 2024 for electricity spending, but that tax department data is available on only a 1-month delay. And so you can see here what I mentioned, that in each of the last 3 years, the estimate of over $2 billion a year on fossil fuel spending. And you can see the real impact of Vermont's exposure to and dependence on a global commodity fuel, fossil fuel 100% imported into Vermont, that exhibits a lot of price volatility. So, the most striking thing to me from this graph is if you look at 2020 versus 2022, you see nearly flat, basically the same amount of total consumption. But we see more than $1 billion increase in costs because of those price spikes. You can remember back to the period between 2020 and 22, lots of factors in global fossil fuel markets, but a big one was Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And then we saw gasoline prices in many cases go from $2 a gallon to $4 a gallon. Fuel oil go from, these are rough estimates, $2 a gallon, $4 a gallon. So it's not surprising, but it's incredibly worrying that Vermonters were then exposed to and on the hook for more than $1 billion more in energy expenses if you compare these 2 years, because of all of that exposure to and dependence on fossil fuel, especially for transportation and heating. I'm realizing that I'm near time, so I want to stop. I can come back and provide more of this economic analysis from the tax department data and others when and if helpful, but I want to pause now to make sure that if there's any questions that you either have for me or come up during the presentation, there's time for that.
Any questions? I'm always a fan of graphs and data in general. So I think it's like all data tells a story. We can have you back to talk about 125 more, but I appreciate that you've had some things to say or questions to ask anyway about it already. And one of the questions that I'm going to have is, to what degree do you already collect some of this data? Does that make sense as a question?
Yes.
Yeah.
We work, I could provide a more detailed list. I would say broadly, we work to collect and share information on many of these questions already. I do think it is helpful to have different analysts responsible for collecting and reporting on the same data. There, in terms of quality control and accuracy, more eyes is better than fewer, and having that kind of peer review process, we really benefit when we have draft reports, getting feedback from state agencies, and oftentimes when they're working on different reports, we will review and provide feedback to them as well. So I don't think that just because there may be some common data tracking or analysis between an independent nonprofit organization and state government, that is a reason to not have each of them do it. I think that the work ends up being better and we can be more confident in it when there are multiple folks doing the work and having multiple eyes on it.
Did you have, because we're almost out of time, did you have anything more that you wanted to share with us before time is up?
You know, just I'll scroll through just so you have a sense. I shared this with Jude, so it will be available in the testimony documents. But you know, we break down. This is census data looking at energy use by income category and comparing that to energy burden or share of household income spent on energy. How do different folks, both by income and whether they're renters or owners, what are their how are they heating their homes? There's there's big differences by income type and by rented or owned. You know, you can, again, speaking to the price volatility I mentioned on the fossil side, this is looking at average heating use by residential household, what applying the prices in those years, what different Vermont families would have paid for their heating on different types of heating sources. And you can really see the effect of that price volatility for propane and fuel oil in particular. Not as fossil gas does not, natural gas does not show the same volatility, but this is just the type of, you know, this is data from EIA and from the Public Service Department. You can see the changes in the different energy sources, prices over time. So there's a lot of information in here that may be of interest to you, and thank you for the opportunity to share it with you.
I know, so much data. And there may be a time when we want to go through that a little more intentionally. Probably now is not that time, unfortunately. Yes, go ahead.
I will say your report is really user friendly and your graphics are really excellent and helpful to just get a snapshot. So kudos to your designer and whoever's doing the graphic and that piece.
It's a team effort and we haven't thinking very hard for that.
What is fossil gas? Is that natural gas?
Yeah, or utility gas or methane gas. It goes by different terms.
Okay, any further questions at this point? Okay, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll have time at some point to go through all of that really interesting data.